We'll get started, and I will do a roll call of the commissioners just to make it easier for folks to acknowledge their presence, and then I'll ask Hans to introduce his staff. So welcome everyone to the July Police Advisory Commission public meeting. I am Rhonda Goldfein, and we'll do a little roll call to see who's with us this evening of the commissioners. Sean Along.
Sean, you're on.
Here, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mujib Chaudhry. I know Mujib is with us.
Yep, I just asked on him.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Ben Geffen.
I do not see Ben on the call.
Okay. George Mosey.
Don't see George either.
Okay. Bilal Qayyum. Nope.
I just got off the phone with Bilal maybe a minute before I sat down. So I believe he's joining. He may need another minute because I logged on before.
Thank you. Michael Ramming.
Don't see Michael yet. I do see Michael Werner.
Michael Werman.
Hold on. You're unmuted, Michael.
Good evening. I just joined. So hello. Thanks for having me.
Hello. And Sarah Young. Okay. The muting and unmuting is rough. So we see Sarah. Thank you. Hans, may I ask you to introduce your staff, please?
Absolutely. My pleasure to do that. I will start from who's first on my screen. Angelica Hendricks. Hi, you can just give us a wave, Angelica, if you want to be unmuted. Right, hi, Angelica. Next on my screen is actually Anthony Arachi. So Angelica's a policy analyst. Anthony's the deputy executive director. Next, I see Talia. Talia's a policy analyst in the pack. And I know I saw Janine. I just don't see her now. But Janine's there, I'm sure. I think, anyway. Oh, there she is. And she is waved. Hi, Janine. Is there anyone on here? Oh, of course. And Danny, of course, who we all know. Hi, Danny.
Hi.
And I'll also introduce BB Kibitz, who's our counsel.
Thank you. So where are we in Philadelphia following all of the unrest after the killing of George Floyd? There's been a lot of important talk about police reform, and Philadelphia City Council passed 2 police reform measures. One is restoring residency requirements for new police recruits, and the other is a charter amendment that would establish a civilian oversight commission. And that will be a ballot initiative come November. What didn't get done was the ban on chokeholds and similar restraints. I mean, a ban on unconstitutional chokeholds. So we think that should pass in the fall. The other big issue still for the fall is transparency around the city's collective bargaining negotiations with the police union. There's been a lot of movement for public hearing on those city proposals on how taxpayer money is spent. The charter amendment that would allow the PAC to be a permanent commission is something that we all need to keep our eye on. Now we're hoping in November there will be a strong turnout and that voters will vote for the candidates and issues that reflect their values. But we want to keep in mind that if civilian oversight is going to work in Philadelphia, then we have to keep our focus on the details. Because right now we have a push for a permanent commission, but we don't have yet the powers and the composition of the commission defined. And as is often said, the devil is in the details. In an effort to fill what we've been calling a knowledge gap for city leaders, the PAC arranged for presentations on different models of police reform. What should police reform look like in Philadelphia? Should it be like what we see in New York or in Chicago? What's the best model for us? So there were a few presentations that Hans arranged. One was the Office of Inspector General model. That's a model where the oversight entity can perform investigations related to operations, policies, programs, patterns, and practices. The next is the civilian-led investigatory model. Both New York and Chicago have this model, and those entities can investigate complaints of verbal abuse, lack of service, use of force, domestic violence, and other types of complaints. And then finally, there's the auditor model. That's the model that allows oversight agencies to review the cases as investigated by internal affairs. It seems as though Philadelphia City Council prefers the civilian-led investigation model. But the thing that we have to keep in mind is that from all of these models, and in fact, police oversight across the country, whatever model Philadelphia ends up on, it has to be properly funded. Otherwise, we're not getting anywhere. We've heard that successful approaches for funding has been to tie the budget of the oversight entity to a percentage of the police department budget. Effective oversight also requires access to information and transparency of the findings. Right? The oversight entity has to be able to tell the public what they found, what they've concluded. And so if Philadelphia is going to use its resources to further develop police oversight, then let's set it up for success. We know how to do it. We just need the will of the people and our elected leaders to get it done. So keep your eyes open for what happens next. With that, Hans, I'll pass to you for your report.
Well, thank you, Rhonda. I appreciate that impassioned call. So hi, everybody. I hope everyone's enjoying the heat wave here in Philadelphia. It's been definitely an interesting month. So I'll try and give you guys a broad overview about what we've been working on, and I'm happy to take any questions. So many of you may have seen, if you have not seen, it's on our website. The PAC has testified before City Council, right before they finished for the session or for the summer, around 3 bills. One of them on stop and frisk, another on the actual creation of the PAC, and another on the public presence or public involvement in the FOP contracting. So those testimonies are all available, and our goal was to ensure that we were understanding the issue from the perspective of our commissioners, but also from the public that come to these meetings or otherwise interact with us, and try to synthesize that for these testimonies. Additionally, the PAC, I participated in WHYY's Policing Reimagined series. That's hosted by Chris Norris, or Chris Flood the Drummer Norris. And that was an opportunity to appear alongside Mark Tyler, Keir Bradford Gray, who's the public defender, and to talk about how policing could be reimagined. And we had a very thoughtful discussion, which I think you can find on their website and on Twitter. I think I retweeted it. As Rhonda mentioned, we participated in additional police reform calls that where other police reform or police review professionals from around the country generously donated their time to speak with our city leadership. So Rhonda went over that already, but it was definitely great to have these other other professionals in other cities share their knowledge and share their experience, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, about what we should focus on and what we should avoid. Those are very useful calls for the city of Philadelphia, and I'm excited about what's going to come from them. The PAC has continued to work on a bunch of projects within the police department. Of course, the Plainview project is still something that we are working on and hoping to provide some clarity on in the near future. It's been a long review period. I thank everyone for their patience. There is just a lot to go through and a lot of issues to work out. In addition to that, the PAC has continued to work with the police department on facial recognition policy. That's a working group that involves more than just the PAC. It's the PAC, the police department, and some other external stakeholders. And we're excited to continue that work, as well as review on the PBI, or the Police Board of Inquiry process. Most notably, the police commissioner has agreed to review that process, but has also agreed that to more clearly outline what it means to create an internal and what policy, and to create a policy which does not currently exist on when a case can be called an internal and when it cannot. And that's something the PAC has been advocating for just about 2 years. And we're very excited that the police commissioner has heard that call and is willing to sit down and at least attempt to manage expectations about when something will become an internal or not become an internal. Additionally, the PAC has advocated that the pointing of a firearm be considered a use of force and be documented as such. We're excited that the police commissioner has agreed to that recommendation and has announced that she will classify the pointing of a firearm. So again, if that's if someone has a firearm pointed at them by a police officer. Currently, if that was to happen, let's say last week, I'm not sure if it changed yet, that would not require any additional paperwork or documentation. I think most of us on this call and most of the folks that I interact with, if a gun is pointed at them, they would certainly feel very threatened and would want that considered to be force. And so that is going to be changing, and we're looking forward to that. And what it means for folks who might have this happen to them, and how it can be documented. In addition to all that work, the PAC and the PPD are continuing to work on facial recognition policy, which I think I already mentioned, so I'm being redundant now. The PAC attended the 26th District Community Meeting, which got a lot of press, but we attended that and engaged in some follow-up conversations around that, and are looking forward to continued conversations around that issue. The PAC and the PPD had a second meeting. We're going to hear from Angelica today about GVI, or Group Violence Intervention. We had a second meeting about that proposal, or about those recommendations, and it was a very fruitful meeting, and we believe there will be some substantive changes, or at least some clear guidance given to police officers based on that meeting and on our recommendations. In addition to that, PERF, the Police Executive Research Forum, has 30 guiding principles on use of force in police departments. The PAC PPD sat down with numerous stakeholders to talk about that, about how we can implement that, how many of those principles already exist, how many of them are congruent with Philadelphia, and how many can be implemented in the future. That was a fruitful meeting, and we're looking forward to a final product from the PPD on that soon. The PAC also participated in the Power Live Free People's hearing in Townhall. This is a town hall that was meant to mimic or be as close to a city council hearing if it was held by public and in the public. Not that city council hearings aren't public. But it was focused on police reform, and again, we had stakeholders from around the country in this case, including city council leaders, myself, and some others who are in the police reform space right now, talk about what this means and how it could be effective. It was a very good meeting, and it can still be found on their Twitter and on our. I'm not sure if it's on our website, but I can definitely get it there, and on Power's Facebook page. And finally, the PAC participated in the GBI Advisory Committee. This is a committee that consists of state and local elected leaders, and of course the PAC. So we're the only non-elected folks on that call who are designed just to understand how this very important initiative, again, group violence prevention initiative, is going to be implemented in the city. It was good to hear the many questions that are in line with our values. Most notably, questions around due process and over policing that are at the core of our concerns. So our elected officials seem to have their finger on the pulse of the issues that the PAC is concerned about, and most notably, Brian Lentz, who led the call, encouraged all on the call to review the PAC report because he felt it was a good example of what the PAC what this program should attempt to avoid in terms of pitfalls. So we do a lot more, obviously, there's a lot more projects going on, but that's a quick snapshot of the last month that we've been working on. Are there any questions about any of that stuff?
There was some questions that I forwarded to you.
Oh, is that via email, Danny?
It knows in the chat I sent you.
Oh, wow. Let me try and find my chat. Sorry, I'm working on 3 screens here, so it's got to find my. Here we go. Have they considered the code? Okay, so the one question is, have they considered code enforcer officers as a way of policing the community prevention measure? Second question from the same person, although the state passed a bill in reference to bad cops being transferred to other areas, what is the city doing to keep from rehiring bad cops? All right. So, Danny, do me a favor. Could you? Does that person? I'm not entirely sure what the code enforcer question is, but while you communicate with them about that, I will answer the second question. Yes, the state has passed a law that creates a directory, so to speak, of officers who've been dismissed from other departments. So this solves a problem where officers could be dismissed from one department in Pennsylvania and be rehired by another department, police department in Pennsylvania, and that police department may not be aware of why they were dismissed from their prior department. In some cases, this has been a problem where someone has found a way to hop from multiple departments after being dismissed from multiple departments. That's admittedly rare, but it's occurred, and they have identified a method to create a database, so to speak, where dismissed officers are highlighted, and the new employer is aware of that fact. So the city would also benefit from that should somebody from a different department attempt to be hired there. But if the question is about arbitration, then that's a separate animal altogether. There are efforts, as I understand it, to reconsider Act 111, but that would not be a city level initiative. And there are, I think, additional efforts to ensure that internal affairs can do all they can to ensure that investigations are as tight as they can be to avoid any of the issues that might exist in arbitration that might be raised from, I don't want to say poor investigations, but could be framed as poor investigations, let's put it that way. So those are the things I'm aware of the city is doing. Is the first question is there a clarification on that, or are they going to ask it verbally?
Darlene, I just unmuted you. Did you want to re-ask that question?
Excuse me, yes. Good evening. Thank you. Here in reference to, I guess, reallocating the money in the police district or whatever, like, wouldn't it be possible, like you said, all officers don't have to be the ones that take down or be crime preventers or something like that, but here, wouldn't they be like code enforcers of walking around, or almost like the beat cops that would do the same thing or drive around or something like that to keep any crime from occurring.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're describing is part of this larger conversation of defunding the police, right? So one of the more popular conversation there is, how do we limit police officers' responsibilities? Why are they doing so much? Why are they, for instance, involved in lower level offenses that don't necessarily require a police officer? So I think the short answer is yes. There's certainly attention being paid to this philosophical idea, right, that we can defund the police and reallocate those resources. And what you're describing, on one level, exists in the traffic officers that are going to be hired, but certainly can be expanded. And I think that on the call we have George Mosey. George Mosey's one of our board members, but also the executive director of PAN, and his team does do a lot of the street level outreach for folks that they believe are at risk of being harmed or may harm somebody. So we do know at the local level, at the national level, that there are models that don't rely on police officers but still focus on public safety. So and I don't want to put George on the spot, but George can definitely speak more to that at some point than I can. But I guess what I'm trying to say is we already have a lot of different initiatives to focus on public safety that are not only the police, and I think that the conversation is starting to take off about how to expand those things.
I mean, because I know you have the rookie cops. Like, again, how can they be put, I guess, work up to an advanced stage and stuff? You know how you start off with the rookie, and then you have your officer, then you have your sergeants, detectives and stuff. So especially everybody's supposed to be within the community now, right? I think that's another thing that they're passing, that you got to live in the city to know about the city. You know, so that's a lot of things, because even when I used to go to court, you have all these cops, they're getting paid and they're waiting to go for a hearing, and then why are they there? All of them have to be there just to show up, but somehow some place a bunch of cops in one big area, and then it leaves the ones that gotta be out there in the community or in the streets or driving around shorthanded.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the great news about what you're describing is I think it's an area of synergy that police leaders and community members agree on, that we should find a way to not overburden police officers with activities that maybe they should not be involved in. I think we need to build on that. I think we need stronger policies, and to really think to borrow from Rhonda, who I don't believe Rhonda created this phrase, the devil's in the details. And so we do need to think about that. But I think philosophically, we're all aligned, which honestly is a big step. It may sound wishy-washy, but it's a big step for us all to be aligned, at least philosophically. We got to figure it out more after that.
Right, because I know it's some community, I guess, members in the area would feel more comfortable that, if they end up saying that they want to reach out to police to let them know that certain things is going around in their area. But if you don't feel comfortable seeing someone and want to go into the office somewhere, I guess you don't know who could be, I guess, paid off for someone in the community saying, hey, this particular house, that particular street, is stuff going on. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you're making some really great points, and so I look forward to future conversations about that, both in these meetings as well as with city leaders, because I think that we have a lot of support for that kind of thinking. Thanks, Darlene.
Another question, Hans, from someone else that asked, are police fired due to the Plainview project in arbitration now to get their job back?
So the question is, are police fired because of Plainview in arbitration now?
Yeah, I believe, would you be willing to talk, Gail?
Yeah, sure. That was just a question, since you mentioned, Hans, that you're doing the report on the Plainview project. I had heard that the officers that were fired and the ones who resigned are leaving their jobs in arbitration. I didn't know if you knew about that or had heard anything.
Yeah, so I am aware that the officers in the Plainview project, some of them have filed a lawsuit against the city regarding their employment. I don't know the specifics about a lot of that, and there's a lot of other information that will come out in our report. But I am aware, based on public reporting, some of the officers involved did file suit against the city, including those who resigned in lieu of termination. So I think those are probably also officers that you're referencing, if that makes sense.
I'll just add to that there are 13 arbitrations that are pending right now for officers that were terminated, that are attempting to get their positions back, and the city is defending those very vigorously.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Gail. Danny, is there another question, or?
Both Bilal and Sean had raised their hands. I don't know if you wanted to.
Sure. Well, Bilal and Sean, go ahead. Do you want to put them in the chat, or go ahead, or mute them, whatever works. But
I just unmuted Sean.
So Hans, like, like, is it true that a lot of arbitration is supported by the FOP? So if that's true, how can we get like oversight of the FOP, or how can we I don't know, like, see a lot. I know the FOP is a union, but a lot of times there be a lot of secret stuff that go on in the FOP. So we got to figure out how can we go and order the documents and stuff.
Yeah. So this is really important. So yeah, the FOP is involved in all, if not almost all, of the arbitrations, right? So that's kind of their role, is to represent their members in employment matters with the employer, with the police department. So they do involve themselves in those, and are often blamed for the fact that we have a lot of police officers that maybe a police administrator or the police commissioner or the mayor does not want on the force, but is there because of arbitration fought for and won by the FOP. So certainly they can reasonably be pointed to as the entity that creates this. And certainly there's a lot of conversation about their political power, right? So what they can do, what levers they can pull behind the scenes, and that none of that is, I think, a secret. A lot of people talk a lot about those realities. So unfortunately, we don't have any real ability. They're a private entity. They're outside of the city government to have oversight over them or their documents. I do think that what shouldn't be overlooked is the fact that while the police union is a powerful body with a powerful administrator, so is the police department. The police department is a powerful body with a powerful administrator, and that's the entity that we have the most involvement with and the most oversight of. And so I really think while we can't do it all, I'm hesitant to make the FOP this all-powerful boogeyman that can't be grappled with. I do think that we do have a lot of things that we can help push from the police department to do that would nullify or otherwise limit the power of the FOP. And some of those are just administrative policy changes, some of those are discipline decisions, etc. But those are things that I try to focus on because those are things that I think we can have a real impact on. That isn't to say that I don't recognize exactly what you're referencing, that there are a lot of structural issues that I wish I had any power to have any influence on, that right now we don't. But there are some folks in the city council, the mayor, et cetera, and some folks at the state level who are paying a lot of attention to the problem that you're highlighting with the FOP. And I think we should all stay tuned to what they do. So thanks, Sean, for that question. Bilal, I'm sorry.
Bilal, you should be unmuted now.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. One of them also, Rhonda can maybe chime in on this. Besides New York and Chicago, are there other cities that have models around police oversight committees that we should be looking at?
So, Rhonda could definitely chime in, but there's 150 police oversight commissions around the country. And there's 15,000 or 18,000 law enforcement bodies, so it tells you where we are on that. But the broad models are the ones that Rhonda referenced. So again, that would be the auditor model, the inspector general model, and the civilian-led investigation model. Even within those models, there's wide variations about how they occur, and all of them are really tailor-made for each jurisdiction. So we probably could have reviewed some of the West Coast models, which put a police board in charge of their police commissioner, similar to how a board of directors supervises a CEO, or how the police advisory commission supervises their executive director, right? So similar to those models, there are police commissions on the West Coast, Oakland being one of them, LA being another, that operate in that way. And I think we all, if we follow the news in policing, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, maybe more now because with COVID, my time just blends. That board dismissed their police commissioner for cause, and that is that's something that we're not really contemplating here in Philadelphia. So we didn't necessarily review that, but that's the one model. Again, even though there's wide variations within how people do their models, that we didn't really spend a lot of time discussing.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked you that is too, as you know, talking to different folks in the city, no one has really a handle yet on what the model will look like. So I think we need to look at all the models that are out there and be able to make some serious recommendations to particularly city council. Mm-hmm. My second question is, since, and this is maybe a legal question as well, can we make a statement from the PAC on the 13 officers that have challenged the city from the Plainview project or on the Facebook, that they should not get their job back if they, and I guess the second part of that question is, and it might be too early yet, the information we got from the police, we haven't had a chance to really do a good analysis to make that kind of recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, but I'll say I'm but a vessel for the board here. So if that's what you all are interested in, I think we should definitely follow up and have a conversation about what that recommendation would look like. I think we have great counsel in BB that can help us understand what the limits might be in considering that. So I think that's definitely something that we should consider, and I'm happy to play the role of drafter in the first draft or whatever necessary from you all. So if that's something we want to talk about more, I think it's a good idea. I think it's certainly within our responsibilities to consider at least.
And the third question, I'll be finished, is follow what Sean says. My understanding, city councils want to have hearings around the city's police department's contract. So are there some recommendations we need to be making as the PAC to city council regarding their hearings around city FOP's contract with the city?
Yeah, so I think that's another one. In my testimony before city council got into this a little bit. I'll make sure you get a copy if you haven't seen it. But it effectively highlighted the ability for folks to not only create agenda items, but what their priority is in terms of negotiation. So So I think that's a place for us, but certainly we'd have to discuss where the, I guess 9 of us now, or 9 of you all now agree on that and circle back. So I think that's a good idea. Bibi, did you want to respond to something?
I just wanted to say one thing to Bilal. You know, we of course can make a statement like that, but don't forget that Hans is working on a more comprehensive report that either explicitly or tacitly will convey those same thoughts, not just about the 13 who were terminated, but will also convey thoughts about some of the officers who were not terminated, who were only disciplined. So I don't know if instead, I mean, we can talk about it. We want to wait for the format of the comprehensive report that discusses all of the cases.
Thanks, Bibi. See, this is what I said when I said we have good counsel, because that's an excellent point. I appreciate that. Thank you, Bibi.
And we want to reassure folks that we will be reporting on those findings, that the notion of what we discover in that report, what we discover and put in a report, that we want to make that, will make that publicly available.
Yeah. Thanks, thank you both. So Danny, why don't we do this? I see we have one more question in the chat. No one is being asked to not ask more questions. In fact, feel free to ask more questions. We'll take them now and put a pin in them, and then circle back after we finish the rest of the agenda, just to make sure we have time. But I do have a question here. Of course, it's an easy one, right? What is the PAC's takeaway, or opinion, or next action after the meeting with the 26th district? So, you know, for those of you who aren't aware, the 26th district, during the second or third night of the protest, had some what can be described as white vigilantes with baseball bats and other items, pitchforks, literally pitchforks, and other items in their hands. And there was complaints by residents that the police did not do enough to quell their presence, and did not make arrests even though there was menacing, etc. So that's the cliff notes of the complaints about that. There was ensuing calls for Captain Fisher, who's the commanding officer of the 26th district, to resign. The captain agreed to a town hall, or a community meeting, I should say, that was hosted by the Human Relations Commission. Rue Landau, being our partner and friend, hosted that, and there was a lot of challenges in that meeting. It was over 300 people on this Zoom meeting, and the captain was accused of being disingenuous or outright lying publicly by many of the community members, and again asked several times to resign. The meeting, most notably, he was confronted and asked if he would commit to stating that Black Lives Matter. The person who asked him to do this stated that they had asked him to do this publicly in person, that he refused to do so, and asked him to correct that error. I don't know if that's true or false, but he did say that Black Lives Matter, and then immediately stated that white lives matter and Native American lives matter, and that I think he said Latino or Hispanic lives matter, and effectively referenced that all lives matter, and that drew a lot of criticism as well. So in any event, we did sit down and have a conversation around this, and I'm not going to share the full details of what we talked about, but to me, what I expressed there is what I'll express here, is that it's difficult to understand how we are in 2020 and we have police leadership that doesn't fully understand the importance of just stating that Black Lives Matter, period. Without equivocating, having further conversation about it. And, you know, I don't blame the captain wholly. I think that when we talk about systemic problems, this is a great example of that. We're promoting folks in police leadership in this case, and I think in many others, that maybe don't understand that or are unwilling to state that, and there might even be cultural issues that if you do understand that, you won't say it out loud. I don't want to speculate and go too far, but it's certainly problematic, and I understand the pain of the residents when they say that this is really a problematic thing for them. And I'll just close by saying that in Philadelphia, and I think around the country, the whole concept of a police district and even the PSAs below the police district is the idea that policing can be a hyper-local issue, and that we need to make sure that there's hyper-local attention to the people in that community. And it should be celebrated that 300 people in a district took their time to really speak to their captain and say, this is what we expect. And I'm very hopeful that he listened to that and said and understands the things that he needs to change to keep the support or to get the support of the people in the 26th district. And I'm hopeful that captains around the city, and I know they do this already, there's a community meeting probably every night with police, engage in a process where they really try and understand what's happening right now and try and bring those issues to this hyper-local idea, the idea that it's very specific to their district. It is not about a guy in Minneapolis, or an officer in Minneapolis, I should say. It's about officers in their district and how they should realize that. And I think that's being lost, and I'm hopeful that more captains and commanders are thinking about it in that vein. So I don't know if that answers the question. I hope it does. If it does not, please follow up or ask me another question on that. But I do want to move on, just so we make sure that we get through the agenda. And so we have 5 updates for the PAC. There is a protest response. The PAC highlighted that we are interested in reviewing the protest response, most notably the ones that occurred in 52nd Street in West Philadelphia, again in Fishtown, and again also in on 676, not to mention South Philadelphia. So we are awaiting a response from the police department related to our request for information, and hope to hear back soon. We have not gotten a response yet. But we do know that there are 2 outside consultants. One, a CNA who did the collaborative reform review for the police department, and Montgomery McCracken, which is a law firm that has experience reviewing police, or I should say government actions, are on board to review the after action of the protester at large. So we're hopeful to work with them if possible. In addition to that, there's been a lot of questions about this letter from the state Senate. Anthony Hardy Williams, Joanne McClinton, and Councilman Kenyatta Johnson all signed a letter stating the PAC would receive an additional $125,000, which is close to the budget that was cut based on the COVID-19 budget cuts. We are still following up on that. Like everything else, it's complicated, and we are working on it. It's certainly not, it's not definitely happening, but it's also not definitely not happening. So we're hopeful to hear more information soon about that. I know many people thought that that we might just get a check in the mail the next day. It's been a longer process than that. I mentioned already that we have the GVI report and a follow-up conversation. Angelica will give us more information about that in a moment. And finally, there's a lot of legislation and police reform that we've discussed a lot today already, but we're excited about the attention that is coming from that. Most notably, the legislation on Act 111, which we're excited about, and the legislation on the registration of police officers at the state level, as well as the legislation that Rhonda already mentioned, so I won't repeat it, at the local level regarding the police department. So with that, Angelica, do you want to take over?
Yes, thank you. If Danny could start my presentation. Sorry, everyone, the PAC's report on GVI was about 60 pages. So just to ease the consumption of the information, I'm trying to just do maybe a brief summary of the PAC's report. So the PAC released our report on GVI to the Philadelphia Police Department in March, and the first presentation to them was in April. And after the first presentations, there were several conversations. They were interested in it. And so just a brief background on Focus Deterrence, which is GVI's parent. So Focus Deterrence began in 2012 with the underlining viewpoint that violent crime is committed by a small subset of the population. And it lasted through 2016. And after the program ended, there was an evaluation of the program. And the evaluator found that there was a 35% reduction in the rate of criminal shootings post-implementation. But not only did she find that data point, she also discovered some pitfalls of focus deterrence. The first thing she discovered was that even though there was a 35% reduction in the rate of shootings, when it came time to look at specifically the individuals who were of focus in the program, the intervention did not exhibit a statistically significant reduction in the shootings. And the second pitfall was that she believed the evaluation did not explore the community's belief that this program may infringe upon certain civil liberties and possible due process violations. So the PAC authored the GVI report primarily to address these community concerns of transparency and due process. And the following slides will briefly review what those recommendations are. Danny, could you go to the next one, please? Thank you. So first, the PAC asked for due process protections, which is notice and a meaningful opportunity to be heard. So currently the GVI notification plan appears to be identical to the focus deterrence, which was if individuals who are on probation and parole, their probation and parole officer would ask all of them to come into the Criminal Justice Center, and they would get a speech by criminal justice stakeholders, politicians, telling them that they are at risk of being involved in gun violence as either an offender or a victim. And so the PAC is asking for a custom notification process where each individual who is believed to be a violent driver will be getting a custom notification. And not just that, but we also want these individuals to have an opportunity to appeal that designation. If individuals believe that they're incorrectly identified as a violent driver, we want them to have some sort of ability to appeal that designation. And the most important part is that we also want to make sure that our community partners are included in drafting what that appeal procedure is going to look like. And prior, the focus deterrence model did not have a custom notification nor an appeal procedure. So those things did not exist in the first implementation, and the PAC is asking for that to happen now. Another recommendation, Dan, if you could turn to the next slide, please, is the PAC is also recommending for the Philadelphia Police Department to activate their body-worn cameras when engaged with GVI identified residents, including near encounters. So this allows officers, supervising officers to audit what their own officers are doing in the community. And this recommendation came from a scandal that just recently happened with the Los Angeles Police Department, where officers were identifying people as gang members, and a mother received a notification that her 16-year-old son was identified as a gang member. She appealed his designation, and when they reviewed the body-worn camera footage, it was discovered that the officers actually fabricated the conversation that he had with the teenager. So the PAC is asking for body-worn camera footage to be activated when these officers are believing that they're having an interaction with a gang member or a violent driver. Dan, if you can turn to the next one, please. In addition to activating their cameras, the PAC believes that PPD should actually document all mirror encounters. So documenting this information allows for a more robust evaluation later on. And also we wanted to emphasize the importance of documenting all levers involved in the GVI process. So currently mirror encounters are unrecorded. And for anyone who doesn't know, a mirror encounter is when an officer engages you, but they don't have any reasonable suspicion that you're engaged in a crime or anything. They're really just making conversation. They can go up and say, hey, how's it going? How's your day going? Or they can ask you, if you may have any tips to offer for a crime or anything like that. That's called a mirror encounter, where an officer could just pretty much walk up to you and talk to you, just like how a stranger can walk up and talk to you. So due to the fact that these mirror encounters are not recorded, there's currently no evaluation that looks at the impact of these discussions to see if they are effective. So officers may believe they're being helpful by having these conversations, but by using a different lens, community members may believe that they're being harassed or other type of assumptions that could be made involving community and police relations. So the PAC believes that more conversations surrounding the effectiveness of mirror encounters and the best ways to conduct them or even record them should take place. And aside from mirror encounters, the PAC recommends for all levers of GVI to be recorded. So for individuals who are asking, what is a lever? A lever is when you are identified in a program as a violent driver. And if you do not cooperate or comply with the program's policy recommendations, then law enforcement or city partners are going to try to then push buttons to make it so your behavior would change. So if they have received notification that you're engaged in violence, they could do something to hopefully put pressure on you to stop engaging in violence, allegedly. So the PAC researched what these levers were in the past for focused deterrence. And the past levers included the district attorney's office asking for high bail, some people having child support cases come up for them, refiling of previously dismissed criminal charges, and also even terminating public utilities. So these are some of the levers that even the evaluator found in her evaluation. And she wasn't able to adequately do an evaluation of these levers because they weren't adequately documented in the report. So the PAC argued for PPD to start maintaining this information so it could be easily accessible to the community, so so the community can know what PPD is actually doing for the individuals who have been identified as a violent driver. So as PPD is reviewing who is designated as a GVI, group violence intervention individual, one tool they're using to identify possible violent drivers in the community is the help of their technology called Operation Pinpoint. So, and as discussed in our report, Operation Pinpoint is the mechanism that stores intelligence information. So due to this emerging technology, the PAC wanted to make sure that that PPD has clear public guidelines for how the technology is going to be used. And we're asking them to draft a directive outlining its use and making sure that the community is involved in that drafting phase. So an example that I put on the slideshow, so this is called a social network analysis. And the person whose face is blurred, in this example, let's say the person has been identified as a group violence individual. PPD has the capacity to locate all of this person's known associates. And they say known associates by individuals this person could have possibly allegedly committed a crime with, or this person may have recently been stopped due to a pedestrian encounter or traffic stop with this individual. So currently, PPD is maintaining this information, and the PAC recently, within our report, we had a section dedicated to the use of this technology, and we're asking for them to make their directives clear about who's going to use it and what power these individuals have and what guidelines that they have. And Dan, if you can go to the next one. And so to our last recommendation is the PAC wanted to make sure that PPD is holding its social service partners accountable. So before PPD even begins the call-ins, begins the notification procedures for GVI, we're asking them to work with social service partners to develop a specialized treatment plan for individuals, so similar to an IEP in school. The PAC, after talking with several stakeholders who were involved in the last planning stages, this was really the core area that was missing from the prior implementation of focused deterrence, is having an emphasis on social service. So even though the Philadelphia Police Department are not social workers, the PAC is asking for PPD to hold their social service partners more accountable. So the report may contain 2 recommendations just for social service partners. And lastly, we're asking the individuals who are contacted, who are been identified as a violent driver, if they are contacted, we're asking for the first person to make that contact to be someone with specialized training in social services, someone who can actually talk to individuals to gain what type of services can the city offer them to help them succeed and make sure they do not become a victim or perpetrator of gun violence. And so all of the conversations that we've had with PPD have been very fruitful, as Hans mentioned earlier. Every conversation has been better than the last one. And our last meeting was just a couple of months ago, and we're hoping to receive their final, a couple of weeks ago. Last meeting was a couple of weeks ago, and we're hoping to receive the final version of their draft in a couple of weeks. Does anyone have any questions about GVI? Sorry, I know that was a lot of information.
It was a thorough report, and we appreciate you condensing all that information into an accessible way. So good job on that. And we'll look forward to kind of the next iteration when we see the response.
Yeah, and so thank you, Angelica, for your work on this and your work on the report overall. It was a long process, a lot of information. It included a national review of some of these practices around the country, and it was really just an excellent work overall. Notably, during the meeting that I mentioned earlier, involving some state reps, the director of the lead of the program, Brian Lentz, referenced our report and highlighted that it should be read by many other state reps and leaders around the city and state. So that just highlights the great work that Angelica did here to bring this information to the fore for everyone here and for everyone around the state and city. So thank you, Angelica. It was just an incredible job and great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question.
Okay.
I was wondering, Angelica, you mentioned that the previous version of GVI hadn't shown any decrease in the rates of those targeted individuals. Can you talk a little bit about your research and other programs and if they have shown any decreases?
Yeah, so the evaluator was Katarina Roman. She's a Temple professor, and so she actually evaluated focus deterrence, which was PPD-led, and she evaluated ceasefire, which was not PPD-led. But in her evaluation, she really focuses on two different research areas to determine if gun violence had actually, if shootings had decreased due to the program. So one is a barrier determination, where if you look at the barrier for a gang identified group, so if there are barriers like a 4-block radius within South Philly, if you look at just the neighborhood area of it, it shows 35% reduction in shootings within the gang territory area. But she did a second evaluation that showed that if you look just for the individuals who are identified as gang members or focus deterrence, they did not have reduction in shootings.
I see. So the distinction is between the geographic area in which the shootings did decrease versus the targeted individuals who did not actually show changed behavior.
Yes, exactly.
And so am I right to assume that since the individuals did not show any decrease in rates of gun violence, that just meant that those incidents happened elsewhere in the city?
Well, she was unable to make that conclusion because a lot of the levers were not identified. She wasn't able to determine if individuals moved. A lot of people were, at the time, it was actually legal for judges to tell people they could not return to their homes while they were on probation. So a lot of people moved to other areas. That requirement on probation has been declared unconstitutional. But there were a lot of factors, and she mentioned this in her evaluation, and she wasn't able to control for and put into her research because she didn't have that information. So, but I believe she's going to be the same evaluator for this one. So if they're recording more information, I'm hoping that she can do more frequent audits to see if this program is even effective.
Thank you.
Angelica, someone asked, thank you, Sarah. Someone asked, out in California, they run a similar program called Advanced Peace, and it's run out of the Office of Neighborhood Safety rather than the police. Would GVI be more efficient if it was not run by the police?
Well, just to be clear, Danny, GVI is not run by the police, right? The police are a partner within GVI. So I do think that that question, if GVI is implemented incorrectly, it will be social service partners that take a lot of the lead. So the police may run Operation Pinpoint, which is related to GVI, but they certainly don't run GVI, if that makes sense. Angelica, did you want to add to that? I'm sorry, I kind of jumped.
No, that was exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Any other questions on Angelica's report?
Yeah, it looks like Bilal.
Great. And then we'll go to public comment on anything that's on folks' mind.
I understand. My question is understand. Well, I have some other comments I won't make now, but anyhow, about the evaluator, and I'll be upfront. But anyhow, I won't deal with that at this meeting. But my understanding is they're getting ready to start this week or next week. Have y'all heard any contrary to the fact about that?
So I think they are intending to roll it out very soon. It's been delayed because of COVID, and I think there's some edits based on some of the social distancing issues. So for instance, call-ins be difficult, etc. So yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily this week, but it's very soon that they're rolling it out.
Someone asked, they're wondering if the PAC has assessed the efficiency of the social services that are being offered in the evaluation of the Chicago Ready program. The social services were the main driver of crime reduction, not the police.
So Angelica, do you want to do that? I feel like I keep answering. So
No, it's fine. Oh, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so in our last meeting with PPD, we also had a conversation as well for social services to see what exactly are the social services who are going to be provided to the individuals, and that's still being finalized now. We're hoping we can still be in the planning stages to make sure that the community's concerns are heard, because at Focus Deterrence before, you know, I believe like one individual was overworked and had the sole responsibility of connecting everyone who was identified as Focus Deterrence with social services. So we're hoping that that portion of it could actually be funded, and now the individuals can have a more thorough and robust conversation with the participants to see what services do they need and connecting them with the ones who can give it to them.
Yeah, and I'll just add, thank you for that, Angelica, that philosophically, I think everyone agrees on the idea that police shouldn't be leading that effort, and everyone agrees that to kind of paraphrase it, that there was not enough carrot and perhaps too much stick in the other form. But I'll say that. Sorry, I got distracted there. It's again gonna have to be ironed out. I think Evangela is on the call and has something that she wants to add. Is that right, Evangela? Can we unmute Evangela?
Which one?
Angela, not you, but there is an Evangela as well. We will get to Angela as well.
Do you know? Are they?
Okay.
Well, a different name. Oh wait, never. I found it.
Yes.
Sorry.
So Evangela and I are not.
Can you hear me?
She's Manos and I am Manos, just for the record.
Yeah, and I am Vanessa, Garrett Harley's chief of staff, and have been sort of running point on the group violence intervention iteration this time around. So I just I wanted to clarify some things in terms of it not being the same as the last iteration. So because of we have the ability, or what we're doing is we're launching custom notifications. So it will start as custom notifications to Mr. Kayun's point, it will be starting shortly. A training period now where we're training teams to go out. And social services, I also just wanted to point out that we have a much more robust social service component. It will be run out of the Office of Violence Prevention. We have, I don't know if you announced this part, Hans, prior to me getting on, but have Morris Hobson as our lead GVI social services coordinator, and we will be shortly hiring 2 case managers to make sure that the prioritization for social services and for social services is that connection is made and they are prioritized. Trying to keep track of the things that Angelica was commenting on to make sure that everybody understood what this iteration would consist of.
Yeah, and so thank you for that, Angela, and thank you in general for your partnership.
And Hans, I'm sorry, did you also mention the fact that you are on the advisory? Did you hear me?
I think the question you correct. Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I think I can hear you now. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that this time around, we have a governance board as well as an advisory board consists of elected officials, both local, state, and federal, as well as you yourself as representative of the Police Advisory Commission.
Yes, thanks. I did mention it at the top of this, so I appreciate you you verifying that for the folks who don't know if I'm just telling the truth about that. So, but yes, I did mention that. Thanks for following up.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you would address it.
No, not at all. I appreciate it. So thank you, Angela, and thank you for your partnership on this overall. Are there any other questions? Okay, so there are some in the chat here, which I overlooked. So I'll get to these. And Danny, just let me know if anyone else wants to be unmuted or if there's any other questions. We have, as Rhonda mentioned, entered the general Q&A or public comment period. So any of the issues that we've discussed so far, we should discuss, or should we feel free to discuss. So one of the questions is, could Hans elaborate on which senators are considering action against Act 111? So, as I understand it, there is some bipartisan support for this, but it is being led by Representative Donna Bullock at the state level. And I think she's specifically attending to target the interest arbitration related to discipline. So I'll point. I will tweet about this later.
And we can put a link to the bill in the chat.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can do that.
Danny certainly can. Danny is the man. I will send it to Danny, and he will send it to the chat.
Perfect.
Even I am prohibited from the chat, just in case I say something that Danny doesn't approve of. Okay, another question is, what model will be less taxing on the board and less time-consuming on legal matters? So I don't know if a board member asked that question. Is someone trying to tell me I'm too time-consuming? But assuming that it wasn't a board member, I will say that we all of these models will need to be supported by the similarly strong board that we have here at the PAC, and we'll need to have the expertise that we've assembled in our commissioners, both for general guidance and for issue-specific guidance. So I don't know that there's any model that doesn't require a strong and a thoughtful and board with a great deal of expertise at the one we have. I think it would just depend on what the goal was of that different model, but they all are equally difficult tasks before them. As far as legal matters, I do think that any of the models if implemented correctly, with the proper structure, shouldn't have legal matters. If I talk to my colleagues around the country, the access they have isn't disputed, and that's the principal legal matter that people have. So if the access is not disputed, there are no real legal matters to settle. The legal matters I'm aware of that people have and that we frankly have are around access. I won't say model, but I will say clear structure. In any model that exists can avoid the question around legal matters. I hope that's clear. Someone did ask here: is it legal for any group who chooses to gather with bats, axes, etc.? I will say, I will point to our chief law enforcement officer, Larry Krasner, who I think answered this question on the chat. And I'll try and channel what he said, which is that once a group starts to menace or otherwise threaten other people, that is when the crime has been committed, and it's not necessarily just the gathering that makes it illegal. But I don't know that to be. I'm just really paraphrasing what he said to correct some questions related to this in the chat. So definitely seek out our DA for further questions on that one. Let's see here. Where does the PPD stand on ending qualified immunity? I don't know the PPD stance on the ending of qualified immunity. Will mental health services be coordinated through 911 to assist people in crisis instead of sending the police? This is certainly a model that exists around the country. I think that we have a lot of really talented folks here in this city who think a lot about co-responder models and alternate response to mental health crises around the city, in addition to trauma. And we have some models that we are discussing in terms of co-responders. And around the country, we've seen these in as close as Delaware, in New York City, and around the country, where they do have these models that involve a mental health practitioner responding to emergencies, even acute emergencies of folks who are mentally ill. In Philadelphia, what can be done, and what frankly has been done, is that addresses and people can be highlighted for officers as addresses or people that have previously had mental illness or calls for service that involve mental illness. Their name doesn't stay registered, or that address doesn't stay registered for a very long time. It's somewhere between 6 months and a year. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think that we are moving towards a conversation, like I said, about defunding the police and about police reform overall, that at least entertains the idea that we have a lot of expertise around about disability services, and that we should include mental health and mental health emergencies in some of those responders. So I don't know that we have a robust area now, but there's certainly a lot of attention being paid to it, thanks to a lot of people like you all who attend these meetings. And are there any other questions, Danny, that I'm missing?
I just sent you another one.
Okay, so why aren't police officers held to the same standard as citizens as it pertains to the commission of crimes? I think that's a loaded one. Many of you have heard me talk about the special exceptions that exist for law enforcement, and that's something that I think frustrates many of us, myself included. And that I absolutely agree with. There's a lot of questions around how police officers are treated when their crime occurs on duty or when they're called to service. And I think that the general response is that people may need a different standard of review when they are acting in response to a call for service. And when we're asking them as agents of the government to do something. But it becomes very complicated, and really it does boil down to the specific instance of a crime, of what occurred. This conversation came up very recently. I got a inquiry from some folks that were very concerned about the panhandler that was shot last May by an on-duty plainclothes police officer. That police officer was not charged with the crime. The DA decided not to charge him with the crime. And the question was if a plumber was driving home from work and had a registered firearm in the vehicle, had made the mistake of thinking he was being robbed when he was just being asked for money and shot somebody, would they have not been charged? We can only imagine that. My imagination, if I'm being honest, is that no, that person would absolutely have been charged with a crime. But I don't know that for a fact. So I'm hearing the frustration in that question. I share that frustration in many, many cases, probably more cases than I can count. And I think that it's, when we talk about legitimacy of the police department, there certainly is a fair conversation to be had about how officers are judged for their actions. And if a good metric is, how would I be charged, how would I be treated if I did the same thing? But like I said, it's complicated, and mostly complicated by the fact that a lot of these actions are occurring when someone has called a police officer to intervene, or an officer was doing their job, and that is that can't be understated as a complicating factor. I don't know if that answers the question, but I hope it does. Danny, are there other questions?
I think that person, Angela, can I put you on? Would you like to ask that? I'm gonna unmute you.
I see Angela.
Hi, I have a question, not pertaining to collaborating or anything like that. My question is kind of more personal. I was wondering who would I talk to about investigating a recovery house that is very corrupt. A friend of mine just passed away there. She overdosed, but the drug she was given to her by leadership. She had overdosed several times. They did nothing to help her. Everything is wired illegally, the water, the electric. I was actually in this program. The women in the program are living in fear. They're often intimidated, sexually harassed, sexually assaulted. I've tried my best to kind of reach out. I created a petition. I know her family, my friend's family is very upset, but there have been a ridiculous number of people dying and overdosing within this particular program. They accept food stamps as rent. I can prove everything that I'm saying. And I've tried to reach out to the investigator general. I think that's his position. I haven't heard back. I've tried contacting news. I've tried reaching out to LNI. Right now, people are being told, do not answer the door, do not come outside until after 4 o'clock, because evidently authorities have been around, but nothing has happened. And again, this is in North Philly, and I understand the demographics. Is a place that, people just kind of, society tends to say, oh, well. But these are people who matter, and they are struggling, and I'm most concerned for the women. I was in that program. I have a friend who is still in the program and tells me all the time that she's so sick and tired of being harassed. And while I was there, the director of the program was caught up in a lie. He had several relationships with several clients, and one of them was exposed, and he came to the house with women from the street and threatened physical violence and harm should anybody say anything about him. And he brought the women from the street into the house, and this is a recovery house full of women, and said, I will have you effed up if you put my name in your mouth. And the owners know. Several complaints over the years have been made, and nothing is done, and something will be done.
Well, Angela, thank you for speaking up on behalf of folks that are marginalized, and thank you for speaking up for these people. Your describing sounds pretty terrible. I think what I don't want to do right now, but what I do want to do is get a lot more information from you, specifically who you reported it to, and provide some guidance about where maybe some departments that you haven't reported it to that maybe you can, and to help you follow up with some other areas namely the police department and anyone else that we can connect you with to get this resolved. So what I'm going to do is make sure that Danny and Anthony connect with you this evening before we finish, and we'll schedule time tomorrow. We're not going to make you wait even later on this evening to get more information from you, so we can really understand what's going on, where this house is, and try and encourage a response, whether it's from the police department, the state attorney general, etc. Encourage. I want to manage expectations that I can't make anyone do anything, but I do want to try and help as much as I can.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also, have you reached out to the Department of Behavioral Health that licensed some of these entities?
Well, I know that my friend that passed away, she was going to the Wedge, and when she passed away, it was kind of the final straw for that institution because they've seen a lot of corrupt behavior play out as well. And I know that they filed a report with CBH, so I don't know where that went, and I wasn't really sure how I would go about doing something like that, or if I even could, because I'm just one person. I'm not like, they don't, like, the insurance company doesn't pay me, you know what I mean? So I didn't know if it would even matter if I said anything.
But they will take, sorry, Hans, but they will take complaints from you. And so, Danny, can you put the link in the chat, or if Hans, if you're gonna speak with Angela later, you'll give her the link where she can reach out to make a complaint to them?
Yeah, so for sure, what we're going to do is connect with Angela right after the call. I was just texting with Anthony about that, so we're gonna reach out to her, and I'll make sure that we provide all avenues for reporting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Angela, if you can send me your number in the chat, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We're sorry for your loss, Angela.
Thank you.
It looks like Sean had a question.
Hans, I am not sure if you know this, but crime relates against people like myself that have IDD is also going up. So I want to have it been any discussion on you using different resources when it comes to in the less of the disability, because I just did a presentation where I saw a cop pour out a gun on a deaf person, and the deaf person tried to reach for his car, and then the cop shot him. So I want to know, has there also been conversation around the disabilities issues that often be ignored?
Yeah, I mean, when you say conversations, I'll say yes, there's certainly conversations. There's also police training around specifically the incident that you're referring to, how to assess and understand and plan for encountering people who either cannot understand you or cannot hear you, and or maybe suffering some other acute episode. So that's certainly part of the training, and certainly doubled down on in some of the CIT training, or the crisis intervention training, and that is, those are efforts that they're ongoing in the police department. But you're correct. You know, there's egregious that affect this population of people, and I do think there should be a lot more done to prepare police officers for this eventuality when they're going to encounter somebody that has a disability that they're not aware of or that they don't understand. So thank you, Sean, for always making sure that we think about these things, because you know they're very real and they occur every day.
don't have any other questions.
No? Okay. Before we take a motion to adjourn, our next meeting is tentatively Monday, August 17th. Follow us on social media for the Zoom link and the confirmation of the date. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Rajiv raised his hand, I think. You want to take that?
Thank you. We'll take one. Do we have a second? John, second. All in favor? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the thoughtful questions and your engagement. Civic engagement is tough at the best of times, and it's a particular strain these days. So we appreciate you spending some time with us this evening. Stay safe, stay cool, and we'll see you all in August.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.